So how did you get your start in track and field?
Ooh, that's a good question. I was actually telling this story today to one of the athletic trainers at the Eagles, and when I was probably about 10 or 11, I was at like the YMCA like summer program. You know, when your parents like drop you off in the morning and then come pick you up in the evening.
Hmm.
And we were playing kickball one day, and I kicked the ball and ran around the bases, scored a home run or something. And one of the volunteers, her name is Judith Panuka.
Hmm.
She was like, "Hey, you're pretty fast. You should run track if you don't already." I was like, "Yeah, I don't run track, but I play a lot of other sports." And so when my dad came to pick me up, she got his contact and made sure that I was knew all the information for the club track team that her dad ran, Sebastian Panuka, the Rising Suns out of Arizona. So that's kind of how I started. And that next November, I started track. We started like our winter program in November, and I've been running every spring and summer since.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So then how did you get started in hurdling?
Hurdling's a little bit more like I was 15. I think I was a sophomore in high school.
Hmm.
I had always been a sprinter. I did the 400 and 200 and the 100. And then my sophomore year, my coach at the time, Tim O'Neill at Brophy, where I went to high school, said, "Hey, the hurdles could be a good event for you. It's not super strong. It's not super deep in Arizona. I think you could win it. You could score more points at the state meet. You could do 4 individual events." So I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I trained for it for about like 4 weeks, 5 weeks before I ran my first race, and I ended up qualifying for state and got second in the state championship that year as a sophomore. So I was like, okay, I'll start doing this as well. So I kind of did the sprints and hurdles thing. And then the next year, first meet of the year, I broke the state record in the 110 hurdle. So I was like, okay, this might be my thing now. So yeah, that's kind of how the start went. And I did the long hurdles as well, a little
Hmm.
bit in high school and a little bit in college too. But I kind of stuck with the short hurdles being my thing.
Wow, that's amazing. So now tell me how you got your start in football. Do you have a memory of when you first fell in love with the sport?
Yeah, actually, so that was kind of like, I feel like I always played football. When I was a kid, I was actually talking to some of my cousins over, I think October or November, they came out to one of the Eagles games. They were talking about how when I was like 4 or 5, we'd be out in the neighborhood playing football, and I'd be, playing with all the older kids and just kind of like running around them and dominating. And I know I played like I think I started playing tackle football when I was 5 or 6, and so I played for the Renton Rangers in Seattle, Washington, where I'm originally from. And yeah, I played quarterback actually on that team. And yeah, that's kind of how I got my start, and then progressed. We moved to Phoenix, Arizona. I played on a couple football teams out in the west side of Phoenix. Kind of progressed, played running back pretty much my whole youth career up until high school. And then when I got to high school, we had a really good quarterback. His name was Tyler Brugman, and so we were going to be more of like an air raid offense spread. And so the freshman football coach Brad Shear was like, "Hey, I think you should play receiver." So I started playing receiver, and that kind of caught on. And that's what I ended up doing. At the end of the high school and throughout my college and now NFL career.
Wow, that's amazing. So when did becoming a professional athlete become a dream for you? And did that dream always include both sports?
Yeah, yeah, I did. It always kind of included both sports as I improved. Growing up originally, I was just like a football player, and
Mhm.
as a kid, you always dream about going to the NFL, watching the football games and stuff like that. So I'm always, since I was 5 or 6, I was like, hey, I want to go to the NFL. This would be awesome. This is my dream. Watching. I grew up. My favorite football player growing up was Hines Ward, because I was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I might get in trouble for saying that. Playing for the Eagles now, but yeah, I was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan growing up, and Hines Ward was my favorite player. And then I started doing the track thing. And when I started getting good, like around high school, then that's kind of where I was like, hey, I think I could do the Olympics. Like being ranked the top few athletes in my event in the U.S. it was like, okay, like if I keep progressing at this level, I have a chance of doing something good here. And, my dad had like a little whiteboard, not like a whiteboard, it was just a laminated piece of paper. And it just said like 6 months goal, 1 year goal, 5 year goal. And I think this was like 2012. So I was a junior in high school. And I just crossed everything out and said, 4 year goal, 2016 Olympics. Because that was like the most near goal. Obviously, I still had dreams of playing football and being in the NFL, but at that time, I was like, hey, this is kind of cool. It's fresh in my mind too, with the London Summer Olympics just happening, and so that was my goal, and I made it happen in that short 4 years from when I was a junior in high school to 2016.
Wow, that's awesome. So I know you mentioned Hines Ward and the Steelers. Did you have any Olympians that you admired growing up?
Actually, it's kind of hard because for the most part, like when you're a kid and you like look up to athletes and stuff, you kind of look up to athletes that are doing your event. And I didn't really start hurdling until later, like 2012, 2013. So growing up running track, it was Usain Bolt, right? Because, I was a 100-meter runner. And then one of my favorite athletes, actually, because his style of running was similar to mine, in the 100 and 200 was Wallace Spearman, because he's known to be like a strong finisher at the end, in the 200s and the races that he won his medals in. He was coming from 4th, 5th place to run and capture a medal. And so that was kind of what I did when I raced. I didn't have a great start when I was younger, and then I kind of just caught everybody at the end. So I kind of mimicked myself after him. And it's actually funny that I'm saying that now, because Wallace actually texted me today, because he works with USATF, and I had to do some paperwork that's due on the 15th. So he was just reminding me to do it. So yeah, it's funny though. But yeah, so those two athletes growing up. And then when I started doing the hurdles, obviously Ayers Merritt was the guy. He had just broken the world record. And then, I kind of started studying David Oliver and Dayron Robles and Lou Zhang, those guys that were really good and what made them good. And then I kind of went backwards from there and watch a lot of videos of Alan Johnson and Ronaldo Nehemiah and Greg Foster and Roger Kingdom, the American greats, that kind of dominated the sport in the 80s and 90s. And so then, just kind of get my, history in the event and trying to figure that stuff out as well.
That's awesome. So juggling two sports isn't new for you. Can you tell me about your time at Oregon and how you learned how to handle doing both?
Yeah, so my time at Oregon was great. It was definitely busy. And doing two sports wasn't difficult in the sense that, like, physically, I'm training year round regardless if I was doing one sport or two. Like when I was just running track the last 6 years, I started training in September, October, and I train and run until August, September. So it's pretty much year round regardless. But the biggest thing is just the time that goes into doing all this stuff, especially with football. I kind of forgot how much time goes into preparation, just, meetings and studying the playbook and, scouting the other team and watching film. That's probably 80% of the time. And then the next 20% is actually like practice and lifting and stuff like that. So the big thing for that is just, the amount of time it takes to get ready and prepare for a game. And it was kind of like that in college too, right? We had, 6, 7 a.m. treatment, breakfast. We had a lift at 7 or 8, and then we had practice from 9 to 11. Then we had class from 12 to, I had class from 12 to 2. Then I would go to track practice from 2 to 4, and then I had class from 4 to 6. And we had meetings from 6 to 7 or 8 in the evening. And then I go home and do homework or eat dinner and go to bed. So it was just real busy, but it was structured, which makes it easy. And I think, I was motivated, so that's exactly what I wanted to do. So I didn't really complain too much.
So then, did you train for both sports at the same time, or did you train for football X amount of months for the year and then track X amount of months for the year?
Yeah, so football was pretty much kind of dominated my training time. During the football season, I didn't do any track
Okay.
training specific. Obviously I was still like running because I run, at my position and still lifting. But um, and then during track season, there's a little bit of expectation to be around for winter lifting. That was in when I was in college, and then also spring ball that happens in April. And so, I was expected to do that as well. So, I kind of sprinkled in some football stuff. And then, yeah. And then once like spring ball was over in college, I was pretty much free to do whatever, in terms of track wise. And then I kind of just did track till July and then
Mhm.
got ready for fall camp and then started over again.
Wow. So, what ultimately led to your decision to go to Oregon, and how did your time there shape you into the person you are today?
That's a good question. Um, I think just the biggest thing for me was the opportunity to do both sports. Although a lot of schools gave me the opportunity to do both sports, but do it at a high level, right? Oregon is kind of known for their like long history and tenure in track and field. Um, and as of lately, the last 20 years, being pretty dominant in football as well. So I think when I was just sitting down thinking about what I wanted to do, in terms of my athletic career, I said, hey, this might be a great opportunity for me to compete for a national championship in two sports. And actually we did that 2014 year when I won my first NCAA title. We actually went to the Natty and played Ohio State that year too. So it was exactly what I had planned in my head or envisioned when I chose Oregon. So that was kind of what went into the decision. And then I think it really helped mold the mindset that I have that I can do both because I excelled at both sports and the coaches there emphasized me doing that. They were excited. The football coaches came to the track meets and were pumped to see me doing well, and the track coaches came to the football games were pumped to see me doing well. And they kind of work together in the sense that like, hey, this is part of who he is as an athlete, and let's make it work. And I think this would be a good thing. Obviously, who knows what I could do if I just focus on one sport at a time. But while I'm still young and can do it, I want to try to get as much out of my body doing the both as I can.
Yeah, for sure. So, why did you decide to focus on track after both of your knee injuries?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing was just that I kind of was a little bit distraught from being injured, um, and not having really any full seasons, to explain it the easiest way, right? Like I got injured at the end of the 2014-15 season, so then I missed that season in track, and then I came back and ended up doing that next football season that was kind of lackluster because I wasn't quite back to 100% yet. And then I ran that track season and I felt really good and it was healthy, made the Olympics, went, got fifth, and then came back feeling good playing football, but got injured again. So I ended up missing, you know, 80% of that football season. So, for me, it was just kind of like I wanted to, one, get healthy, and two, just like kind of a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth from the 2016 Olympics, knowing that I should have done a little bit better, and believing that I should have won that race. And in hindsight, it's hard thinking about like the Olympic Games, like the pinnacle of our sport, but it's also just one round of races, right? Like we put so much emphasis on the prelims, semis, and finals, which is just happens to be the biggest thing in our sport. But sometimes you may be prepared, but your body just doesn't agree with you, or you're not prepared and you run great, or you run great, or you just kind of have a bad day, and that kind of happens. So, I try to, now that I've done my second Olympics and that Tokyo year, I had a good season, good year coming off an injury. Um, I try not to emphasize like how I perform in the moment. Obviously, I want to do well, but like, all I can do is prepare and be ready for the actual competition. How with the outcome in general is kind of, there's nothing I can do about that other than get ready and do my best. So, I try not to stress too much about it. So that's kind of where I was like, okay, I'm going to give myself, these 4 years that turned to 5 years with COVID to focus on track to see what I could really do. And then, once that kind of that time period went up, I realized that, running the August 15th or whatever date I ran in August in Tokyo, it was kind of too short of a window to join an NFL team for the season. So then I took another year kind of to get ready and get into a off-season training at OTAs with the Eagles, and then training camp, and then now the season.
Wow. So for both the Rio Olympics and the Tokyo Games, I know that you were prepping coming off of injuries and you didn't really have a lot of time. I know for Rio, it was like a little over a year for your ACL.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had labrum surgery 9 months before Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
What was that recovery process like for both games, and how were you able to recover so quickly?
I think the biggest thing that I realized and try to think about when I was recovering from those injuries is that injuries are going to happen as an elite athlete, especially if you're trying to break through to the next level, right? You're training hard and you're trying to get to the next level and you're pushing the envelope a little bit. Not that you want it to happen, and I do my best, with trying to prevent that. I try to eat well, sleep well. I have athletic trainers, physical therapists travel with me. Now my coaches kind of me and him talk about the daily plan and the weekly plan, and it changes based on how I feel to kind of keep me healthy. But it's going to happen. So injuries are going to happen, and really just believing that, hey, like I said, I had 9 months leading into the Tokyo Olympics, and the real goal was okay, at 8 months I got to be ready to run because that's the qualifier. So what's the plan here? Have surgery, on crutches for 10 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever, and then I can walk for another 4 weeks, and I'm allowed to run December 15th. Okay, so that's the goal. So I start jogging December 15th. I'm allowed to sprint January 15th or whatever that timeline is. Okay, I can start sprinting. So now once I start doing that, the goal is what's the next progression, and kind of how I feel. And I think my coach especially has found out for me, and if I'm healthy, I'm going to do well. So the training part is important, but it's not the main component of how when I compete well in a year. When I have a good season, it was because I was mostly healthy the whole season. I didn't do anything different with training. Some years I even did less, like the 2021 season Tokyo Games, I ran 12:99. I did less training than I've ever done before in a year.
Yeah.
And then even this last season, 2022, with getting back into football and spending 3-4 days a week not on the track at all, doing football stuff in April and May and June, and still running 1284 coming, and running 13:0 and 13:1, 5, 6, 7 times, starting to realize whatever is there, I have it. I just need to be healthy and fit, and it's going to happen.
Wow, that's awesome. So now, what do you remember most from your experience in Rio, your first Olympics?
What I remember most, I think the biggest thing is just kind of being, taking it in as what it is the best athletes in the world around. I went to China versus USA in basketball, saw Kevin Durant and those guys play. Saw Michael Phelps win a gold medal in the 200, live, which is pretty awesome. And then, just seeing great track events as well. Wade Van Niekerk breaking the 400-meter world record. Me and Christian Coleman, we actually talk about that every time we see each other. He was on the bus. Wade Van Niekerk was on the bus with us while we were going to the stadium to go watch that race. So he had arrived maybe an hour before the race was supposed to go. And I don't know if he warmed up at the village and then took the bus over, or if he doesn't need to warm up very much, but whatever it was, it worked. So those things come to mind when I think about memorable moments, is just seeing all the great athletes and great performances, and just enjoying the sport. And then you get to hang out with, your friends on the track team and meet a whole bunch of people, from different sports, especially from the US, because we all stay in the same apartment, and then a lot of different people from different countries, just because we're all around each other for 3 weeks.
Wow. What do you remember most from Tokyo?
Tokyo was obviously a lot different with the COVID protocols, but I think Tokyo as a city and Japan as a country is pretty elite in terms of just like how they run everything and how awesome it is. So I really enjoyed just being there in general. But yeah, like Tokyo's, I think competition was really good, and I think the weather was great for track. It was super hot. It was good for fast times. Right, we had world record in the 400 hurdles and a whole bunch of fast times in the 100 and 200, and so that was good. Like the performances were good. That was a positive. And then it was good just to kind of be, back into the sport after missing a year of competing. We didn't compete much in 2020, and then like, March of 2020, we thought the Olympics were just going to get canceled, right? So it was kind of a relief that we're finally there, getting to compete, which was cool. So, just having that like memory. Obviously, it wasn't. I'm not going to say it wasn't as cool. It wasn't as like much of an experience because I got there 5 days before my competition. I competed and I left 2 days after. We weren't allowed to do much, but it was still a good experience because it's the Olympic Games. It's the pinnacle of sports in general. So it's just awesome to be there.
Yeah. How would you compare Devon Allen in Tokyo versus Devon Allen in Rio?
I'm definitely more confident coming into Tokyo. Not that I wasn't confident in 2016, but for me, I think just 2016 Rio meet, even that Olympics was the first time I traveled overseas to compete. And that was like the first time I got on a flight longer than like 5 hours. Like to go from the East Coast to the West Coast. So that 10-hour flight from Houston to Rio de Janeiro was definitely kind of eye opening. And then just being in a different country to compete, eating different food and trying to catch up on sleep, even though like we didn't really get jet lagged too much because it was like same time zone as Houston. Just learning all that stuff was interesting. And then trying to like have fun within reason, right? Like I was there 2 weeks before my competition, and so I'm like, we're running around like as a 21-year-old kid does, like having fun and trying to enjoy Rio and doing all this stuff, but also like, hey, I got to focus on my competition. And then in Tokyo is a little bit more like business, right? Because one, we weren't allowed to do much, and two, I've been there, done that, and I had that experience in Rio, so now it's time to just focus on accomplishing the goal and getting the job done.
Paris 2024 is right around the corner. What would having the opportunity to represent the U.S. at your third Olympics mean to you, especially since you finished within the top 5 both times?
I think, to be honest, it means a lot, and I think in my head, this is the one for me to win, right? I think I'll be 29, which is like in a sprinter's prime, 25 to 30, 25 to 32. Usually like when all the sprinters kind of like run their PBs and are real consistent. So that'll be my prime for my event. And then also, not a lot of Americans, especially in the hurdle event, have made more than one Olympics. So now that I've made 2, my goal is to make a third and come out with the gold medal. And I think it's hard to explain kind of the excitement because it's 2 years away still, or a year and a half, but that's the next goal. If I had a whiteboard up on my fridge and had a goals up, that would be the goal, right? So everything I'm doing now is to prep for that. I've gotten smarter as an athlete, and like I said earlier, doing a lot better, taking care of my body and progressing and getting stronger and faster and doing all those things. So I think I can only go up from here. So it'll be exciting. And in the U.S., the hurdle event is so strong that you got to run fast to even make the team. So usually, if you make the team as an American in the hurdles, you have a good chance of winning a medal.
Yeah, awesome. So switching gears a little bit, I just wanted to talk about your father. First off, my condolences. I know that you lost him recently. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Are you comfortable with me asking you a couple
Yeah.
questions?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So I know your dad passed away just one day before you qualified for 2022 Worlds at U.S. Championships. What happened and where were you when you found out?
Um, I was in, where was I? I was just in my Airbnb, which was like just across the street from like the track, in Eugene, because I went to school in Oregon, so I'm kind of familiar. So I was trying to find a good spot and just actually just woke up and had gone. I don't know where I went, to be honest. I had just gone to go pick up. Oh, I had just gone to pick up my buddy Marco Ruiz, who's one of my high school, one of my best friends and high school teammate in track, and he ran steeplechase at Rice. And he was like, "Hey man, I'm going to come out to the meet." He ended up coming out, but his flight got delayed like 12 hours, so he ended up landing in the morning of the competition as opposed to the evening. So was grabbing him, and my coach was on the phone with my aunt, and my aunt was the one that kind of got the news, that he just, went into cardiac arrest. And, my aunt had to, break it to me. And obviously that was difficult in the time. But, I did as well as I could, probably better than most people, just trying to, take it in, but also, focus on what I was there for, and what, he would want me to do, and accomplish one of my dreams, and continue to do that, which is still, still what I'm doing now, playing football and continuing to run and doing all those things. So, obviously, I'm not going to say it didn't affect my performance that meet, but it was definitely hard. And I skimmed through by a hundredth of a second to make the championship team. So, that's kind of what I'll remember is not necessarily, what place I got, but, making the team and, getting on that world stage again.
Yeah, that's amazing that you were able to, still achieve that with all the circumstances. What's the biggest lesson that your dad taught you, and what do you miss the most about him?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing, especially for me and my sister, he instilled in us is just to have a goal, and don't quit. Whenever we did something as a kid, as a sport, whatever we did, we weren't allowed to quit, even if we didn't like it, right? So if we tried something, tennis, karate, whatever, we had to at least finish the season, right? So, that's something I always, take with me, and teach my kids and my family, because that's super important. Once you commit to something, and once you give somebody your word, it's important that you go with that. So yeah, that's definitely something, and it's going to kind of guide me and help me, in my athletic career, especially probably post athletic career as well. But even this season, like training camp was super difficult, just because I hadn't played football in so long. So like I was sitting in the hotel sore. We got, 3 days in a row. It's hot. Training camp's hard. It's the NFL. People are bigger, faster, stronger. I'm getting beat up. I'm like, oh man, like, am I going to be able to survive this, pretty much? And, that's what kind of goes through your head, when going through that stuff. And I'm glad, I kept working, and, made it through training camp. And now that, the season's going, I'm progressing really well, and getting back into my old self, playing football again. So I'm pretty excited.
Oh, I love that. Do you remember the last conversation you had with him?
Yeah, I actually talked to him, not too long before that. I think it was Father's Day, because that Father's Day is like mid-June, right?
Mhm.
On the phone. We just chatted. Nothing serious, for a couple, like 15, 20 minutes. We always text. I think I was talking to him when I was over in Paris, and Oslo, obviously the time difference is pretty big, but he's up early, so he would get up early and text me before I went to bed. So it's good. Yeah, it was always good to talk to him.
Oh, I love that. You just kind of touched on it a little bit, but going back to those dry erase boards, right? I think I read in an article that it was on your dad's fridge that you had that
Mhm.
with your sister. Um, how impactful would you say that those dry erase boards and goal setting, how impactful has that been on your career?
I think for me, especially, Just when you have a goal, I think it's important to, I mean, you don't have to write it down, but you can tell somebody about it or make it known because, you put a goal in your head, and that's important too, is to kind of, start it there and for it to be conceived in your mind. But, unless it's, kind of out in the open and it's known, the only person that can hold yourself accountable is yourself. And as an athlete, especially at the elite level, you need more than just that, right? Like, I can't do anything I'm doing athletically on my own, right? There's a lot of people and a lot of support staff that help me, get to where I am today and are going to continue to help me, in the future. So it's important for me to be like, hey, this is my goal. This is what I want to do. And, I'm going to do my best to keep myself in check, but it's important for, you guys too, to be like, hey, this is what you said, like, stick to it. So, that's something that I use for, not so much the whole, like, dry erase thing. That's, it's cool because it's actually still at his house, on the fridge, but, just having goals are important. And then, writing them down and letting people know about them are also important because, those people are going to help you, stay on track and stay disciplined and achieve that.
I love it. So your dad, he saw you fulfill your dreams and get to 2 Olympics and get signed to an NFL team after your pro day. What was that conversation like when you told him about the Eagles?
It was actually he was there in person. When I was talking to Howie, I was there with my dad and Anna Hartman, my physical therapist, who was helping me get ready for pro day when I was in Eugene. And it was funny. We did the pro day, and about 10-15 minutes afterwards, I get a call from Howie. He's like, hey, he's trying to figure out everything that's going on, because obviously my case is a lot different than other rookies coming out, to go to the NFL, right? Because there's an NFL draft and all that. Since I wasn't draft eligible, like he was like, you can just get signed right now, right? And I'm like, well, I don't know, like I think so. So he's like, all right, let me, like, we figured that out. And he's like, okay, we want to sign you and, get you become an Eagle. And so, that happened pretty quick. So, being able to talk about that and kind of, I didn't sign the paperwork that day, but, to kind of celebrate, that even that, having that conversation, getting the chance is pretty cool as well. So, but yeah, that's always been something I talked about, growing up as a kid. So I'm finally getting to live that dream and then accomplish that, and on a team that's really, really good, that's doing well, obviously. And, we get this first round bye. We just won the NFC East yesterday, and there's still a lot more work to do, but, we're getting closer to our goals.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So your tattoo, Everybody Loves the Sunshine. I know that it was your dad's favorite song, but you've had it for quite a few years. Can you tell me why you got it and how much more significant is that tattoo to you now?
It's why I got it. It's kind of funny. It's just, I think I was just 22 or 23 and just bored. But I thought, it was, something that meant a lot to me. And meant something to my family, and in terms of just, its importance, growing up. It's always funny that when I tell people about it, it's like, in my household, it was like Sundays, you go to church or you're cleaning the house, right? Like, so my dad would be up early, playing music real loud, and we'd be up, and some of those songs would come on. He'd be like, all right, you got to dust everything in your room and clean everything up. And obviously, as a kid, when you're 10 or 11, you're like, oh, this is the worst. But it's always good to have those memories, and looking back on it, it wasn't that bad. So, it's always kind of funny, just thinking about old memories when you're a kid.
Yeah. So let's talk World Championships. You're on your home track, coming off an incredible few meets, and then the moment that set the world in outreach happened. Tell me what happened from your perspective.
It's kind of hard. Like, so in the moment, it's not really that surprising. Like, false starts happen a lot. And I've been in races where there have been false starts, or, faulty equipment or crowd noise or like a misfire of the gun or whatever. So, I've been in plenty of races where there's been callback. I was actually in a race in 2018 at the semifinals and at the U.S. Championships where we got recalled 5 times before we even ran, right? So, it's not like a crazy thing to happen. So, in the moment, there's no like inclination that I false started, right? Like, because I, in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm just reacting to the gun. So there's not really any reason why I should be worried, right? So I'm just kind of like, all right, whatever, push the hurdles over and walk back. But to my surprise, they were calling me for a false start, and so I was pretty just not really confused, but kind of panicked in the moment because I just didn't know what to do, right? So like the first thing to do is like, okay, like what was going on in the moment, so I got to like see what the official's seeing and all that stuff. So it's kind of unfortunate that it's so close to the limit, right? Like 0.0999, being 1/1000th from being a legal start, was kind of unfortunate. And, there had been a lot of false starts in that range for that meet. And then also, just kind of a lot in general, like, by like 10 times the amount of really fast starts, right? Like starts faster than like 1.12. So, in my head, I'm like, okay, maybe there's something wrong with the equipment. And then, it's it's funny now, but at the time my coach had noticed that my reaction time in the semifinal was 0.1001, which is just 0.02, slower, which is legal. Right. So, and he was, jokingly, he was like, I was going to say something before, like, hey, hang in the blocks because your reaction in the other race was super fast. But, he didn't really want to, he didn't want that in my head, really. And in my defense, if you look at all my reaction times on average, like at pretty much any race, you can Google just about any race, I'm going to have the fastest one. I just am notoriously quick reactor compared to all the other competitors. And that's just, nothing to do with them. It's just, I'm just a better reactor. I'm just quicker than them. So, so obviously, I'm disappointed, and I know like, I did my best to, advocate for myself and, try to be able to run. And, obviously I wasn't able to accomplish that, but, in the moment, there's not much you can do other than, walk up the track or, cuss everybody out and make a scene. So I decided that, that's not really in my personality to make a scene. So I just kind of walked off.
What do you remember most from that moment? Like, what's like the first thing that comes to your mind?
The thing I remember most, it was like silent, obviously, because everybody's kind of like in shock. And then I could hear my coach, screaming on the track. Jamie Cook, he was screaming from where he was sitting or wherever he was standing. So he was trying to help me as well. So, it was kind of a blur, and it happened very quickly. I know it was like 1 or 2 or 3 minutes in real time, but it felt like 10 seconds. So, but I guess there's nothing really I can do now. It's just kind of, forget about it, and now just continue to keep trying to win every race that I run. And I know that the IAAF just put in an amendment to that rule recently, and said that the starter's allowed to let the runners run under protest if he thinks there might be a malfunction with the equipment or there's something wrong. If it's so close that there might be a issue, because to say that the equipment, there can't be like, some error in the equipment at any time is not necessarily true, because, nothing's perfect. But yeah, so that's good. I know my agent wants a little bit more, Paul Doyle wants a little bit more, not leniency in the rule, but he wants it to be like, if there is a doubt, there shouldn't be a false start charged at all, because the rule now is just kind of changed to now you can run under protest, which still technically means like you're disqualified, but they can look at it after the fact, which is better, but not necessarily what we think that it should be. So
yeah, what do you think it should be? And have you personally had any conversations with USATF or World Athletics?
I mean, I wouldn't be able to talk USATF wouldn't have any say. I mean, maybe the higher ups, have a vote. But and I don't really have a say. I think like the rule itself is a good idea in terms of just like there being a limit to how quickly you can react. Whether or not 1/10 of a second should be the limit is kind of arbitrary. They're just basing that on some studies that they did, I guess. I'm not exactly sure how they came up with it, so don't quote me on that. But whatever they did, that's what they decided. So, and there's been plenty of fast reaction times and times, before there was like the sensors that, people reacted, either quickly to the gun or whatever. So, maybe there needs to be some kind of technology that kind of just reviews like, all right, so this person reacted at 0.85 or 0.085. Like, let's look at the footage. This is when the gun went off. This is when they start applying pressure. Like, it's hard to say because some people might be guessing for the gun, or whatever, but like, it's kind of hard to do. Whenever I explain, with people how I react to the gun is like you hear it like a bang, right? I'm reacting on the B, like the B sound, right? So, that's what's made me elite. Like I said, if you go into the history of all my races and diamond leagues and stuff like that, I'm consistently one of the most, the faster of the, reactors of the bunch. So, I don't know. It's hard. That's a hard question to answer.
Yeah. So how did you keep your composure and where did you go during the actual race? Like, what were you doing during that time?
I mean, just disappointed because, there's a good opportunity for one to run again, at my home track and my family was there. And, I felt good and my fitness was good, and I was ready to run fast. And I think that could have been a race where I broke the world record, which would have been cool as well. Break the world record and win the gold. So, to not have that opportunity in the specific moment kind of sucks, which is disappointing, but I know I'll have chances in the future. So that'd be good. And then, for what I was doing during the race, I just went underneath the stands and there's like TVs in there and stuff. And, there's not really, I guess I didn't really have to watch the race because I kind of knew what was going to happen anyways. Like the feeling was the Americans were going to go 1, 2, 3 regardless. So, now with me not in there, the Americans were just going to go 1, 2 at least. So, and that's what happened. So, and those guys, in Granite Trey are great competitors and super consistent as well, which makes them so great. So, I just kind of watched the race and, changed. And I had to do a whole bunch of interviews. Obviously, everybody was asking same kind of things you were asking, right? So I did that and then just kind of left and had dinner with my family.
Oh, well, everyone was outraged. To this day, people are still really upset about it. Vernon Norwood tweeted about it.
Yeah, I saw that. I did see that. Yeah.
How did it feel knowing that you had so much support?
No, it feels good. I think, not even just because, I was disqualified, but to know that many people were watching, right? Like even, it's funny to say, like even when I got to training camp, like my teammates that, had known me just for a few weeks were like, man, dude, I cannot believe that happened. I was watching. Like, so I had a lot of support from people that didn't even know me, right? Like know me that well, which is cool too. So, I don't necessarily think they need to be outraged. It's just kind of like what happened, it's just, I'm not going to say it's part of the sport, but it was a part of that day. And, it'll be a good story in the story of my life in terms of, win this, break the world record this year and win the Olympic gold medal. I'll be able to kind of put that, if we make a movie about it, it'll make for a good story.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So I know you lived through these things, but I just wanted to read you this timeline. Okay. April 8th, you signed with the Eagles. May 29th-ish, you get COVID. June 12th, you hit the 12:84, third fastest time ever in New York. June 16th and 18th, you win Diamond Leagues in Norway and Paris. June 25th, your father passes away. June 26th, you qualify for Worlds. July 18th, the disqualification. And then July 26th, your Eagles training camp. So much happened in that time frame, incredibly high highs and low
Yeah.
lows within such a short time span. It seems like you've had to move on to the next thing really quickly. Have you had time to process everything, and how have you dealt with it all?
That's a good question. Probably the simple answer is probably haven't had time because, I'm just, like you said, I'm just so busy and trying to focus on the next thing and focus on, the moment, in terms of what I'm doing in the moment. So, with having COVID and then, one, the COVID thing wasn't the worst thing ever. Obviously, I didn't have lasting effects and other than, just being like really sick for a couple of days. I just, I took a week or so off of training, which, didn't affect me too much. Like we talked about, my coach was kind of like, all right, well, we figured out the recipe, you healthy and, fresh, you always run fast. So did that and then did the New York thing and decided to travel to Europe just to get a couple more races in because my season, I felt like I just needed more races. And then, coming back, getting ready for USA's obviously is like you qualifying for the final for USA's is almost harder than qualifying for the final at World. So like have to be super locked in for that, and everything that happened around that time was difficult. So like, focusing, but also, your mind somewhere else. And then, once you make the team, you got a month to prepare and, you got to kind of reevaluate everything you've been doing and kind of be like, all right, what do we need to improve in this next month? Decide if you're doing enough or too much or whatever. And then, after the actual race, the plan was regardless, right? Like it was going to be, the initial plan was to have a gold medal and world record and be celebrated for a day and then fly back to the East Coast and get ready for training camp. But either way, I had to fly back to the East Coast and get ready for training camp. And, once it started, I was locked into that because, the NFL is not an easy league. And, even to make it through training camp is difficult. Even, to be on practice squad or being on the team in any capacity is difficult. And, it's a revolving door as I've noticed, being in the NFL for this last year. So, you got to be on your stuff, every day. You got to perform every day, and that's really important. So, I kind of am hyper focused on that. And like you said, so I haven't really had a lot of time. I'm sure, hopefully after these next few weeks, right? Like we have our NFC game in 2 weeks, and then the NFC Championship game, and then hopefully a Super Bowl, and hopefully everything goes great. We win the Super Bowl, we can celebrate, and then I can have a little bit of a break, right?
Yeah.
I'll take 5 days off because then I got to start training for track.
Wow. Oh my goodness, that's a lot. So let's talk the NFL a little bit. I know we're running short on time here, but you had an impressive pro day at Oregon, and then you signed with the Eagles literally right after, like you just said. I read somewhere that you said it's good to go somewhere you wanted. What about the Eagles organization made you feel wanted?
Yeah, I mean, it's just that, like right away, Howie reached out, our GM, and voiced his wanting me to be there. And then, when I arrived there at OTAs, the coaches and the training staff and the strength coaches and stuff were also, excited about me being there as well. And then training camp is the same sentiment, kind of giving me the opportunity to develop and kind of ease my way into things, which as an athlete that's competed at a high level can be frustrating at some times, but, in hindsight now appreciated, right? Like they didn't throw me into the fire, right? Like they could have had me playing, 80% of the snaps in the preseason games, but being that I hadn't played football in 6 years and I've only been practicing for 2.5 weeks, like, is that really the best thing for me? So that was good. So give me the chance to kind of like catch up. And then now, as the season progressed, my development, I feel like, has gone really well, and I'm getting better every week. So I think, that's the one thing I can hang my hat on and focus on is, it's important just to keep improving, because if you're not improving, you're getting worse. And, so my goal is just to every day I practice, do something better and compete. And I think the coaches and the front office and everybody around the facility are seeing that as well. So, it's good. I think I'm in a good spot. I think overall the emotion towards me is positive. And, hopefully, my goal is to obviously be playing. And if I get the opportunity in the playoffs, great. Like, I'll be ready to go. But, if not, it's the same goal. It's the same goal in the off season, the same goal next year in terms of just, preparing, keep continuing to get better and, doing what I can to get on the field.
What will your training look like in the off season? Are you gonna jump back into track?
Yeah, I'll jump into track probably the months of February and March, and April, and I got a couple of meets planned in April. And then I'll do the back and forth thing that I did last season, April, May, and June, and kind of, do my 4 days a week, in Philly for OTAs. And then, train, get on the track over the weekends, and the goal is to feel fresh and to, be doing everything I need to be doing in order to compete. So we'll kind of adjust that based on how I feel. Like, obviously, if I'm not really ready on the track side and I need to be ready, I need to spend more time doing that. Or if I feel good and confident where I'm at, then, it'll be, continue as planned.
Yeah. What are your plans for balancing football and track next year ahead of Worlds in Budapest and then into 2024 for Paris?
Yeah, you're asking me questions that I don't have answers to yet. Obviously, I know the schedules, and those don't necessarily mesh 100% with training camp like they did this last year. So I guess the biggest thing is just communicating that. Like, I'll have that conversation with my coaches and Howie and those guys, just to kind of see like what the goal is for me, and like what the plan is. Like, hey, like, what do you envision me? What do you want? What do you need me to do? What's the goal? Like, am I going to be is it goal for me to be a, 30 play a game guy, 80 play a game guy? Like, the guy. Okay, great. If that's the case, then, we need to adjust the plan, be able to, focus on what I need to focus on in order to be the guy. Right. Like, and then on top of that, I think I've done it before in terms of doing both at the same time. So, the goal is to maybe get a couple of days off or a few days off in order to fly to Hungary and compete. And hopefully I can feel good. And like I said, as long as I'm healthy, I have no doubt in my mind that I'm going to compete well. So, we don't really have a plan yet. And I think the biggest thing is just being, transparent and trying to figure out a plan. Like I said, like talking to the coaches and the front office staff and see kind of what the goal is for them, for me, and then for me to let them know what my goal is. And, my goal is to contribute and to be the guy and help the Eagles win. So if that, if those values and stuff add up, then do everything I can to make both things work, as well as I can. I don't know if I'll have a private jet or a helicopter flying me around between games like Dion did, but, I'd be able to make it work.
Awesome. So overall, what's been your experience playing in the city of brotherly love, especially with a team that's had a really great run so far and could be a Super Bowl contender?
Yeah, it's been awesome. Even since I got here in OTAs, competing at Penn Relays was amazing. Feeling, that whole experience was amazing. And the fans are great, even at that track meet. And then being able to compete around and be in Philly and walk around Philly and, get noticed and people being really friendly and stuff like that is cool too. And I know it's like, the Eagles fans get a bad rep, but it's been pretty good since I've been here. So I can't speak on anything but experience. So, it's been awesome, and so far so good. And, they show a lot of support, which is kind of part of the reason why we do so well on the field too, because, the home games, and getting that home advantage during the playoffs is big, because those fans are going to be, an extra advantage for us.
Who are some players that you've leaned on and learned from on your team and just within the NFL?
Oh, that's a good question. A lot of guys. Probably from the beginning, one of the receivers that kind of like, helped me a lot is Greg Ward. He's actually on practice squad with me right now. He came off an injury, but he was on the 2017 Super Bowl team, and then has been on the Eagles roster and played the last few years as well. Who else? Britton Covey. Me and him are rookies together, so me and him are close and good friends, which is awesome. And then I spent a lot of time with the backup quarterbacks, right? In terms of, because those are the guys I get a lot of reps with. So Gardner and Ian Book, I spend a lot of time with, and then just made a couple friends. Just in general, Tyree Jackson and Trey Sermon, those guys, spend a lot of time with them. Those are guys that are on practice squad with me as well. So, it's hard to say. And obviously I spent a lot of time with AJ and Devontae Smith and Quez Watkins and all those guys in the room. But, as a football player, you kind of, you get close to the people you're around all the time, because we're doing scout team meetings together. We're doing practice, together. We're on the practice squad, which is cool. So, those guys have been really helpful, especially the veterans of the group, it helped me learn how to practice, how to prepare, and just, helping with confidence, and boosting my confidence when I'm, when I need it. We do some stuff on our off days. We just, we run extra routes and all that stuff. And, sometimes all you need to hear is like, oh man, that was a good route, and that, that kind of builds you up a little bit, even if it was a bad route. But yeah, so that's good.
Oh, well, what surprised you most about being on an NFL roster? Do you have any fun stories or details you can share?
I mean, one, the food is fire. So I keep, I'm not too heavy right now. I'm like 195. I competed at 188 last year. So I didn't put on too much weight, but if I was eating like I wanted to, I'd be like 205 right now. So food is good. The facilities are amazing, in terms of like whatever you need. In terms of weight room, recovery, and the atmosphere in the locker room is, something that like any football player or at any level, has, got to experience and has enjoyed, right? Like just being around the guys and just, making up hypotheticals and arguing about them, for 30 minutes before practice starts. So that's always been fun too.
Oh, that's awesome. So injuries can happen in any sport, but there's that saying, right, that NFL really stands for not for long. You tore both of your ACLs playing football, and we've all seen even more recently how dangerous and life-threatening the sport can be. When you see all that happening, does that ever make you want to reconsider?
Not really. I think, my mindset is, like you said, injuries can happen in anywhere in any sport. Like, I've had injuries just running track, right? Hurt my hip, I've had Achilles and all this stuff. So, not saying that football isn't dangerous, but like I said, I think the biggest thing that you could do to kind of prevent that is do everything you can to stay fresh, stay healthy in terms of rehab, prehab, keeping your body strong, getting good rest, so that you're out there alert and everything is kind of firing in all cylinders, because that's the best way to stay healthy. But I try not to worry about it. You can't really go out there thinking about it, because if you think about it all the time, you're just not going to play well.
Yeah. All right. So for our last section, I've got a little bit of rapid fire questions for you. Ready?
Okay.
All right. I'm not ready for race day without
without Kendrick Lamar. My pre-race. I was listening to Mad City, the whole album, when I'm warming up.
Love it. Do you have a pre-race hype song? I know you kind of just said you listen to the album, but
probably Money Trees.
Okay.
Yeah, Money Trees. Yeah.
I read somewhere that you want to become a classically trained chef one day. Do you cook now, and what's your go-to dish?
Yeah, I do. Actually, you should follow me on the gram, because I do post some food. I just got a pizza oven for my girlfriend for my birthday, so I've been chefing up homemade pizzas.
Nice.
My physical therapist Anna, she just got me a wok for my birthday, so I've been doing like fried rice and like stir fried, like beef and broccoli and all that stuff too. So I'm kind of like venturing out into other dishes. But my go-to, to be honest, because I eat simple, to keep it clean, is just like steak, potatoes, maybe like steak, sweet potatoes, and some kind of green. It kind of changes up broccolini or, asparagus or bok choy if I'm feeling Asian or whatever.
Nice.
So.
How has golf impacted your game?
Ooh, golf. Golf is difficult. I think golf is positive for an elite athlete because it's all mental, and I think it's like the next play mentality you have to have playing football, or next race mentality, right? Like you hit a good shot, like great, you can celebrate that good shot, or celebrate a touchdown or a first down or whatever. But in golf, you hit a bad shot, you got to forget about it because the next shot is just as important as the one you just hit. So it's fun. It's fun to just be outside with your friends, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's never a time where, you're golfing with buddies where it's kind of dull. So that's always good, especially in Phoenix when I golf, usually like around this time of year before I was playing football. The weather is like 60, 70 degrees. Perfect.
Wow. All right. So I fully believe that both of these things will happen for you someday soon. But if you knew just one of these things was guaranteed to happen, which experience would you pick? You have to pick just one. Winning an Olympic gold or winning a Super Bowl?
I think a Super Bowl.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, if they said, hey, you could guarantee one of them, yeah. But, the reason I say that is because, not that I'm not going to win a gold medal, because I am, but I've already had 2 chances at it, and it seems, it's not easy. I'm about to say this and it's not easy, but it seems easier to make the Olympic team for me right now than it is to make the Super Bowl. Just because I guess so far actually it's pretty easy because I've been on one team that's already made the playoffs, which doesn't happen all the time too. So we'll see how this season ends up. And then I can answer that question and see how hard it really is. But I think winning both things are difficult. I'm not saying they're easy, but they give out 69 Super Bowl rings because the active roster and the practice squad, and they give out how many Olympic gold medals? 1,000.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying one's easier than the other, because that's not the case. So don't come at me, whoever's watching this. But yeah.
What other Olympic sport would you compete in if not track and field?
This is easy. If for summer games, I would do like velodrome cycling.
Okay.
Yep. And then for the winter games, I would do short. No, actually, I wouldn't do short. I would do short track speed skating for sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Which drills?
It looks awesome.
Oh, sorry.
No, you get.
Which drills would you say are harder, football or track?
What drills are harder? Ooh, intensity wise, football. Skill wise, track. Okay. Like football. Yeah. I mean, just football practice, the intensity is just high, like the whole time. So, but in track, it's more technical and very precise, especially when you get to my level. Like, everything I'm doing has to be, perfect.
Yeah. Did you have AIM back in the day? And if so, what was your embarrassing screen name?
Ooh, AIM. I did. I can't even tell you. I have no idea. I had it, but I wasn't really like a social media guy back then. I didn't even have a MySpace. Right. Okay. I was a little bit too young for that. Like my first thing was Facebook, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're singing karaoke for your life.
Yep.
What song are you picking?
Ooh, that's easy. Actually, there's 2 songs I was singing. Seal, Kissed by a Rose.
Okay.
Or If I Ever Found Love. Who sings that? What group is that? If you know what I'm talking about. And if I ever fall in love, so true. But yeah, I'm not a good singer, but
I don't think I know the song, but hey,
I don't know. Yeah, that's actually, you actually made me realize I got to memorize the song all the way, just in case that comes up. Like, hey, for your life, you got to sing karaoke. Yeah.
You never know. Anything can
happen.
Never know.